I can imagine your books have got such an appeal to them for people that want yeah. Obviously, you're still writing action, adventure, thrillers, really engaging stories, but it's the setting. They often say that the setting of any good book is like a strong character. For
Yes.
you, setting clearly is very important in terms of just immersing the people in the atmosphere of the location, but it also drives the stories that have been told as well.
Yes, totally agree with you. And my setting is a character. When I'm doing my edit, I go through and just like you layer a character, like you make sure that, they've got like their blue eyes the whole way through and, brown hair the whole way through and, whatever the else. My setting makes sure that, yes, this is how it smells coming through and this is the look of the things. There's always, the five senses are always layered in and yep, absolutely.
Yeah. For those people that will never get a chance to go to Africa, you're giving, you're really opening a bit of a window for people to just get a feel for what it's like to be there.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, I do. I hope that's what I am doing because as much as I go to everybody, just visit, it is really expensive to visit. So it's well, to get there to visit. Once you're there, it's not so bad, but to actually get there to visit is and it's a long flight from Australia as well. So it's yeah.
I've got a question about how do you balance between, say, factual or historical research and blending that with fictional storylines and fictional characters. The whole idea of telling a fictional story that's woven around factual events. How do you do that? How do you sort of find that nice balance?
So I do have factual timelines in my books, yes. And I do try and create things around those timelines. I guess I've just been lucky so far because no, it's not luck. It's really is a lot of research and it's a lot of knowing your story and knowing what would really happen, like being in that character's sort of in their psyche and actually knowing what would do. A lot of the time, like I must admit, sometimes like I will write something and then my husband, who's my first reader, he'll read it and he'll go, yeah, that's too female, that's not male enough. And so I do have that. And he goes, yeah, think about this. Would I do that? And I go, not in hell. And he goes, yeah. And I go, yeah, but you're not a macho man, you're a beta. And he goes, yeah, no male is going to go and do this. No male. So I go, all right, So so I do have that help where I get pulled up for things like that before other people see it, which I'm really lucky to have. But yeah, both of us even though I'm the the daughter of a motor mechanic, I still had a the day after my publication came out, my cousin took great pride in phoning me and saying, "Hey Tina, does a diesel engine have spark plugs?" And I go, "No, it doesn't." And he goes, "Well, then why do you have a distributor cap in your diesel engine?"
Oh no. And it's already gone to print and
it had gone to print, yeah. And
yeah.
because because he doesn't know about them, I don't know about them. My female editor didn't know about trucks, so it got through. But yeah, it's definitely things like that. I do sometimes trip that tripped me.
Do you have a particular reader? Sorry,
do
you have a particular reader in mind then?
Anybody who loves Africa, basically. And yeah, people who love adventure and action adventure. I tend to go on the thriller side. Yeah, people who love books. I was one of those kids that when I started reading, I read everything. I read anything and everything, even if the toilet paper, I would read that. So I just kind of go, I hope that readers will find my books and love them as much as I do. So I wouldn't say I write for a specific reader. I write for myself to tell myself the story, but in the hope that readers will love it and buy it, obviously, especially now that I'm so.
Sorry, Harry, did you have a question from before when I spoke over the top of you?
I've lost. I can't remember what that was now.
So
probably
don't worry.
Red wine.
I did on one of my first novel I published, and then somebody who knew about cars pointed out that the car that I'd put into this scene didn't have back doors.
Oh dear.
And it was just like, oh god.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so the ebook version has that edited, but the print version doesn't.
I know it's so easy to do. I had a Cessna in one of my books, and I actually wrote to Cessna and said, okay, this is the Cessna that I want to put in the book, and this is the year it's in, and can you just please verify? And the guy said to me, I wish you wouldn't bring down one of ours, because I was like, bring it down because of mechanical fault. And he said, no, please don't do that. Please, can you, he said, because this is really bad. And so we had a conversation about why he didn't want me to do this in my book. And I said, all right, fine, I won't do that. And then I had it was sabotaged instead. And then he
There
said,
you go. I was
yeah.
just about to say sugar in the fuel or something like that, But,
yeah. And then he said to me, oh, and don't use that Cessna, because that didn't come out until 2 years after your book is set. So it's like, oh, okay. So he sort of like gave me that. So it is good to do your research as well. He actually still sends me a Christmas message every year, because I didn't do that.
Crash his plane.
I didn't make it a technical fault that, because the Cessnas are really, they're big in the small industry and moving tourists around in Africa. So yeah,
I think that's something that's important for new writers, is that don't feel shy about asking people about going directly to companies. You might get knocked back, but simply you might find somebody who's going to give you all of those gems of information and feed you with all the sort of technical details you need, because
absolutely,
they're into their product,
So yeah, absolutely. So when I wrote Song of the Snow, it was Firebird. When I wrote Firebird, and I wrote about the glass violins. So I sent an email to the company who makes the glass violins. They gave me a Dropbox entry to their company with everything about the manufacture of them and all these concerts that they do and all the names and everything. It was amazing, the amount of stuff that they actually gave me. And it was just like totally, totally over the top. Like they said, here we go, just here's all the information you want. And it was just absolutely amazing. And then I asked an artist who I knew had done stuff for a similar cause. And I said, can I please use your auction in the, your real life auction in this? And he went, I don't want my name anywhere near your work. I went, okay. So you just never know, I mean, here's these big companies saying, yep, go ahead, here you go, and helping me and still sending me Christmas cards, years later. And here's an artist going, no, I don't want to be associated with you. It's like, okay.
And I guess there's also the risk too, you could get caught down in those rabbit holes in the name of research. So if you're wanting to find out something that's going to feature in one particular scene, and then you can just spend too much time and over researching.
Oh, I'm guilty of that always. But you know what? I always go, maybe I'll use it in another book. Like I did research, probably about 6 books ago, about how to get a wagon across a river when it's like flooding. And I think I'm now in like book 8, and now I'm only using what I actually learned then. So it's not wasted if you go down that rabbit hole. You just got to, you just got to store it up and go, okay, hopefully I'll remember it in a few years' time. Because for me, that's the thing now, remembering it all.
So I've got a question about your book. So you said you started writing romance and children's books, and now you've got 7 adult novels.
Yep.
What's your go-to now? Are you still dabbling in all 3, and are you now specifically focused on your African-themed adult books and novels?
I'm still doing children's books as well as adult books. So I love children's books. When I got my first picture book, which my kids, obviously when I was reading to them is when I started writing, sort of thing. So when they were really little, and I've got a picture of them, they were already like in university, like, by the time that I actually got my first picture book published. So it was quite amazing. Obviously I couldn't read it to them because, I read it to them, but, it would have been lovely to have it when they were little. But I think that a lot of people start writing when they find the love of those kids' books, and then they start writing there, and then, they go on and they find that they're actually quite difficult to write. And then they, it's also very, very competitive and very, very expensive to produce a picture book. So, but I think that I will continue to write my adult books, obviously, but I also do love doing the kids' books. I will have my foot in both camps. How's that sound?
Sounds good. I think it's great to have options. You just never know. You might be inspired to. You might just need a rest from a particular style of writing, and I think it's good to have that variety.
Yeah, I love teaching the kids. Like I just did a school camp this weekend where I had like 20 kids. So I absolutely love teaching the kids. They're just so full of beans, and they're just so full of mischief, and they're so full of story, and and for them the story is so real in their heads. I absolutely love that. And then I go into the other camp and I go, oh, but I love teaching the adults as well, because then you tell them what to do and then they go and do it, and they bring you back something even better than what they brought you the first time, and it's like, yes, this is just amazing. So I do still like both camps. I don't think I'll actually ever just choose one of them now that I've got both. Probably keep to both.
Yeah, and I think that's good not to restrict yourself and pigeonhole yourself into a particular, put yourself in a box and say, well, this is what I do. I think you look at all that so many authors have diversified, and I think that's really healthy to give yourself that freedom to do that. I do have one final question that I'd like to ask before we start to look at wrapping up this first episode, and we'll then go on and talk about your conferences and your and other projects that you're involved in. But in terms of your publishing journey, you talked about how you secured your first traditional publishing deal, then moved on to, I think, your first 6 books were with a traditional publisher. More recently, you've now moved into printing, publishing under your own imprint, and you sort of left the traditional publishing stable. I think for a lot of emerging writers out there who are looking at their options, looking at self-publishing versus traditional publishing, I think a lot of people will be really interested to hear your story of how you've made that shift. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So how I made the shift. Okay, so
I was in this elevator, and is that how it started? No.
I wish I was in the elevator. I would go for COVID hit. My last book, Cry the Firebird, got caught in the beginning of COVID when they returned everything to the publishers. It was the first time ever that I'd had a lot of returns and stuff. At the same time, I had asked my publisher, I'd said, am I getting another contract? And they'd said, oh, it's going to depend on the numbers. And of course, COVID, numbers are terrible. So a lot of authors I know were all in the same boat. Everybody who sort of like had that happen at the same time. And my husband had been on at me for quite some time as well about trying self-publishing, because I had my one tiny little book out there, which was self-published, because Robbie Grady, who was another author, I just wanted to be in a book with her and with Mel Tesco. So we put out this book, and that's how The Avoidable Orphans came about. Because then she said, oh, you got to take it out and put it on your own on Amazon. I was like, what? So we'd sort of like had this tiny little bit of experience with going into self-publishing. And then we just went, you know what? Let's just try it. I had tried to get that book published. I had gone to other publishers and said, this is a book that I want to publish. And even after it won Nashville, I still got knocked back so many times. And it was like, you know what, I'm over this. I want this book out there. And so we went down the self-publishing. We made a publishing company called Wild Press, which is a play on my maiden name, which is actually Vilda. So I always call it Vilda Press, but everybody calls it Wild Press. So yeah, and it's I think because I've got such a supportive husband, and because he's so technical, he's a real techie, that it's just sort of, it made it easier for me to just go, okay, well, we can do this. And so I have to credit him with a lot of that, because while I had to do the edits and re-edit the books, because when you get your rights back from a company, they don't give you back your books like as they were edited. They give you back your file like before you edited it. So because it's that's what you have, the other stuff is theirs. So but I was one of these, I'm one of these people who never throw a file away. So I have like multiple copies and stuff like that. So we were really lucky that we were able to cobble most of it, back together, and then have it re-edited and by an independent editor and proofread, and then put them out ourselves, which was an interesting process in itself, because it basically consumed like 1.5 years of my time just doing those. So yeah.
So you've re-released your entire catalogue of books?
every single one is back out now. As of the end of March, every single one is back out, and yeah, now worldwide, which is really, really good. And so ebook and print on demand, and it's been really interesting getting like emails from people like in Switzerland going, I have waited so long to be able to get this book, because at one stage my Brother About One went up worldwide by mistake, and a lot of people got it as a yeah, things like that happen in publishing, I promise you. Even though they didn't own the rights, it went out, and it was like, oh dear. And then,
Whoops.
yeah, so a lot of so people who had like had a book 10 years ago were like, oh my gosh, you've published all of these in the meantime, and I can get them. So I've had a lot of emails like that coming in, from people who have now been able to get the whole set, and which is really nice. Starting to get traction a little bit in the States. I wish we could get more, obviously, but it takes time. It took a lot of years, obviously, to get published and then to get into the traditional publishing, and obviously it's going to take a few years to get used to the self-publishing, and it's a totally different ball game. It really, really is totally different. I mean, when I used to have a new book coming out, I would go into Target on our island, and there would be my book, and it would be like, okay, I can buy my, my copy, have a shelf picture with it, and I'd go into the airport, and there was my book, which is, just every single author's dream, to be in the airport book. And now I know that as a self-published person, I'm not going to have that. But I've had that, but now it's like, that's okay. I've had that. Now I can hopefully just do justice to my stories and put them as, and write what I want to write, and just do them when I want to do them, which is really interesting.
So now that you've had a chance to look at both experiences, just sort of, I guess, by way of summary, what have been your experiences, the pros and cons of both? I suppose, self-publishing gives you a lot more control, but as you say, you don't have that wide scale distribution as well that you would get with a multinational publisher. So I know it's early days, but what are your early assessments in terms of comparing experiences?
I'm still leaving my kids' books as trade publishers. I'm not even trying to go down that level of book at the moment. But for trade publishing, I still have a very big part of my heart still is in trade publishing. I think they gave me a really, really good footing. And I think that it was really an amazing experience to have 6 books with them, and to go the journey with them. I might consider going back, but at the moment, not unless they came with a really, really good deal. So it's just, I think, you know what, I enjoy that if I see there's a mistake in the book, I can straight away fix it. And, I've only got like, 20 copies on file, on hand. It's like, oh, that's okay. Those can just go out cheaper, and I can, have the mistake fixed. I really, really like that about self-publishing, that I can just fix something straight away myself if something's wrong. Which is
excellent. Well,
and the turnaround can be quite a lot. I mean, I was amazed at how long the traditional publishing process takes, and
absolutely.
And as a self-published author, I can literally write and publish my book in the same year, whereas to try and do that traditionally would be incredibly difficult.
You wouldn't get it, but and also I do think that as a self-published author, you're supposed to get more in your pocket. Obviously, it's going to depend on what advertising you do and everything else like that, but I think for now I'm in a happy place with it. That I'm lucky that I'm not scared of the technology, and I have got the backup. But I think if something had to happen, cross fingers it never does, I don't know if I would cope doing self-publishing on my own. And as well as writing, I think and doing my conferences and everything else, I think it would just,
it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is a lot of work. I mean, my social media is I no longer do all of that. A lot of it's already generated, and stuff like that. There's a lot of being the author that TM which I just can't do everything anymore, and I've had to sort of pass on to get stuff done. So for me to still write like, 1.5 books a year now, hopefully, it's means that I have to give stuff away, like delegate. I have to delegate. How's that word? That word.
Nice word. I like delegate.
So are you finding now that you do have to focus more energies on the marketing and you have to be a lot more proactive, whereas previously you might have had, marketing experts who are doing a lot of that distribution and stuff for you. So
Yeah.
are you finding that you've
It
had to shift into
definitely
that?
takes up thinking room. It definitely does take it up. And I think as well, when I used to get a bad review, I never used to bother reading them. Now if I get a bad review, I kind of like, I think I'm taking them more personally, because it's like my product from beginning to end. And it's like, oh, damn it, this is not good. If I'm getting, I always laugh. I always said when I was working with Harlequin, my worst review was I got a 1 star because somebody couldn't get the book in their, in their territory. They gave me 1 star because they could not give it. And it's like, you bring my whole average down because,
Yeah.
and I don't think they realize that when they do it. But, and I always now, if I got that 1 star, I would go, what territory are they in? And I would be proactive and actually going and saying to Sean, make sure that it can be, please, if it's in Uzbekistan or wherever, make sure that they can get my books, please, so that, the 1 star review can go away. So
and have you been able to see whether your buyers, particularly now that you've gone into your own sort of imprint self-publishing, are buyers still international? Are they compared to Australian buyers or people who are in Africa or other parts?
International, international is growing. The Australians, yes, they're still supporting me, but my international audience is definitely growing. Very, very much so. And I think, there's a lot of behind the scenes advertising going on and stuff like that as well, which I'm very grateful that I don't ask me stats and things like that, because that's his job.
Actually, I do have one final question.
Just give him a nudge, he'll tell you. Or has he drank too much wine now?
We might have to do another episode with hubby. I think he's right there. We might have to bring him in.
The wine glass is empty. How's yours looking, Harry? Also empty.
Absolutely empty.
I do have one final question. I lied, but at what point?
Another final question.
Another final.
Sorry,
I've got form for this. At
Sorry,
what point did you feel comfortable calling yourself a full-time writer? That your career, your job was being a full-time writer.
Oof, I probably 4, maybe 5 adult books in. Because I was running the conference as well, I was then able to go, if I was on my own, this would support me. Obviously being married with 2 kids, living on a canal property, and we need 2 of us. But if I had been like a person on a normal, just in a normal rented place or whatever, yes, I would say about book 4, by book 4.
There you go. It just goes to show you have to be resilient and be prepared to play the long game.
The long game is good.
Yeah, obviously a lot of writers still have to have their day job, and to make that transition into, I suppose for a lot of people that's the benchmark for success, is to be able to say, my career as a writer is what's sustaining my income, and to be able to make that jump to a full-time writer.
It's really weird that, because people seem to think it's really important, but it's not. What's important is your enjoyment. If you really love your daytime job, then stay with your daytime job, doing that as well as writing. But and I know people who did that for many years, and I know people who still do that, who are on the New York Times bestseller list, and they still, do their normal job as well. Like, just they do like 2 days of their job, but they still do it. So I think it's more about, just keep loving writing, because when writing becomes a chore, then it's not fun anymore. Then it's just a job. Whereas me, I still think of my writing as, it's like a fun vacation in life. It's like, what I love doing. So, when I sit down and I write my stories, I love being in that world. There were times when I have sat in that world and just cried and had to, find out what was going on and stuff like that. But mostly, I think if you really love it, it'll just it shows, and it just, yeah, love it. That's all. It's easy to say, oh, I want to be the full-time writer, but there's a lot of pressure that goes with that full-time writing as well, and the expectations of people, of publishers, of the, the other writers and everything else on you is also something which nobody tells you about in the beginning. It's one of those things that you just don't know about until you get there, and then they go, oh, you have to do this. It's like, what?